All right, here we are. We're back with another one. This is another exciting episode of the Colorado Buffaloes Bid Week Live. I'm your co-host, Big Dog Chico, and Brian is getting right over there. It's reporter, of course, uh, Buff Zone, and so on. Brian Howell is my co-host here. We got some things to get into, of course, with the Colorado Buffaloes coming back uh, and getting a big victory over Baylor at home in the conference opener. As we can find us live right now on the Bleacher Report app. Y'all make sure y'all download that and check out all the good stuff that's going on over there and the good programming from the BR creators. Brian, let's go ahead and get started. Jump right in. How you doing, first of all?
I'm good. Decided to switch up. It's a lovely fall afternoon here in Colorado, as you can see. A little
Yeah.
bit better than the weather might be in Florida this weekend when the Buffs and I go down there. But I decided to take advantage. It's nice out today.
Yep.
How
There
you
you
how you
go.
doing?
Well, I'm doing great. My background is not as nice as yours right now. If I step outside, it'll be fine. The weather is great here.
I'm sure the
uh,
weather's just fine where you are.
Yes, the weather is great here, but we're gonna get into the weather in Florida as some of the I think the equipment staff and the equipment team has already taken the trip to head down to Florida early because of the weather down there, and we'll get into how that might affect the game. But let's go ahead and start off with a little bit of a recap and give our players of the game from this past game in the win 38-31 over Baylor.
Yeah, that was quite a game, and you and I have not really chatted a whole lot about it since then. But um, I mean, I'm not sure I've covered a game that so dramatically went from they're going to lose this game to oh my gosh they won this game. I mean it was quite the swing, and I'm sure the emotions were just as much watching on TV as it was being there, and it got to be a top five finish I've ever covered in any sport. I mean that was pretty impressive.
Yes, with the ups and downs and the back and forth, and then the sacks at the end, and then Shador kind of wheeling his way to, that Shador magic, getting up out of those sacks and extending
Yeah.
plays and making the completions downfield. Travis Hunter, unbelievable once again. You know, as far as the recap go, I'll say this: Baylor came into the game wanting to run and wanting to establish that
Hmm.
run, and if you look at the running what they did from the running back position, turn around and handoffs. It wasn't very productive. We
Right.
stopped the run. What are some other things that stood out to you?
Yeah, and we're going to get into this, but that's a huge key going forward. Is that the Buffs are actually doing a pretty good job against running backs this year, and I'm writing a story in the middle of it right now. 3.9 yards per carry they've given up to running backs, which is not bad. It's been the quarterbacks that have hurt them, but I will say that I was more impressed with Baylor than I was going into that game. I really thought that Baylor was not a very good football team, but I was more impressed with them watching them live and in that game. I thought they had a good plan. I mean, the Buffs clearly have an issue stopping good running quarterbacks, and they've got to fix that. That's gonna be a huge problem this week. But the Buffs showed some resiliency, which we haven't seen a ton of in the past, and I thought that was a big game for them, potentially a turning point for them, and be able to get themselves up off the deck a couple different times. I mean, they're down 24-10 at one point, and then they're down 31-24 in the last couple of minutes, and uh, almost everything was going against them in that last drive. I mean, Shador sacked. I think it was Jordan Seaton had a holding penalty. You're sitting there at second and 24, with time running out. And
Yeah.
so I don't know how they were able to pull that thing out, but I mean, the resiliency I think was huge for the Buffs.
I think that's the main thing too, that
Mhm.
mindset and having that inside of you and knowing that, going into these next games, no matter what the situation is, we know in the back of our mind that we can find a way to pull it out. And as far as the victory goes, you
Yeah.
find a way, and then that way we can, never, lose hope or belief in that we can get a victory no matter who we're going against. Before we get up out of that segment, let's go to the player of the game. And
Yeah.
I would have to say the guy who had his, fifth straight 100-yard receiving game, and that's Travis Hunter, and also did his thing on the defensive side. So, I think we said it last week. We're gonna have to exclude Travis from being our player of the game because
Yeah.
we could do that each and every week. But Travis, and if not Travis, we'll go with the guy who had 13 tackles, and that's Cameron Simon Craig.
Yeah, yeah, and again, not only Travis but Shador. I mean, you could almost put them
Yes.
up there every single week. And so once again, those two guys, I like to exclude them because we're so used to Shador's going to have a good game. He didn't have a great game, but
Yeah.
he was probably the offensive player of the game. Travis was probably the defensive player of the game because of the play he made. But taking them out, I think you got to go Cam Silman Craig on defense, and he had 5 tackles in Baylor's first 7 plays, and they were solo tackles and
Crazy.
setting the tone. Finished with 13 tackles. I think it's a CU career high for him. I don't know if it's a collegiate career high, but really set the tone. He is playing phenomenal football right now. There were other guys on defense that played well, but I got to go with him. And then offense, I would probably go LeJohntay because he made that catch there at the end and really kind of fought through what was kind of a quiet game for him. He had another big catch right before that, a couple plays before that too. So I would maybe go him, as the offensive player of the game. And but there were a lot of guys that stepped up and needed a lot of guys to step up.
A lot of guys stepped up. I'll say this real quick. I wasn't going to do this, but real quick, shout out to Amarion Miller for the big play he made. Without that huge play, who knows where we'll be. The Mata staying focused and making those extra points and field goal, but making an extra point after that huge play to send it to overtime.
Yeah.
Just imagine, a lot of guys can come up there and actually shank that.
Right.
A lot of coaches will be thinking about, should we even kick it here or should we try to go for 2 because we're not really confident in our kicker. So, Mata's showing that you can't ice the Iceman.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but that's a great point you make, is that that's a tougher kick than people want to give it credit for. Not only the pressure of you just had that play, and if you miss that kick and lose the game, can you imagine? But there's pressure there, but then the rain was coming down harder at that point in time. So you got the rain element in there too. I know it's a chip shot because it's an extra point, but you got to give Mata some credit there because that's not a hard kick, but that's a harder kick than people want to give him credit for.
With that pressure on you, and it's 3 people are making contact with the ball, from the snapper, to the holder, Mark Vassett, to Mata actually putting his foot to the leather and kicking it through the big eight.
Yeah, and with a wet ball. I mean, anything could have happened there. I mean, it could have been a slippery snap. It slips through Mark Vassett's hands. Maybe Mata has the easiest job of the 3. I don't know, but that whole operation. Let's give all 3 of those guys, Cameron Hawkins, Mark Vassett, and Mata credit, because that was monumental. I can't imagine what the narrative would be if they make that catch, if LeJohntay makes that catch, and then the extra point sails wide right or whatever, and they lose the game 31-30. I mean,
so shout out to those guys once again. Yeah, shout out to them. They're getting their name. What other podcast or show you going to listen to where you're going to hear those 3 names called?
That's right.
Talking about Buffs football without them being, called because they missed or shanked something.
Is anybody else giving Cameron Hawkins credit this week besides us?
Nobody.
We're the only ones.
I saw him in the team store also, I think, with his girlfriend. So shout out to Cam, man.
Yeah.
And Mark Vassett and Alejandro Mata.
And you're right. And you're right about Amarion Miller. I mean, that play that came at a time when they were down 24-10 and really not going very well at that point in time. And they needed, and Shador even said it, he goes, we needed a big play, and Amarion did that, and his knee was about that far off the ground.
I'm sitting there, I'm yelling on the live stream. I'm like, yo, that's the shadow. It's not his knee on the ground, it's a shadow.
Right. And Baylor's zooming in on that this week and saying, was there a blade of grass that came up and touched that knee pad or something? So yeah, shout out to him, because that was a really important play.
And since we're talking about it, you said the blade of grass, I guess the field crew, needs a shout out also, because they had to deal with a truck coming onto the field last week. And no one noticed it. And no one would have known if they looked at the field. And so, big up.
In fact, I never even thought about it. I never even thought about it until you brought it up. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. That did happen. So, yeah, a lot of credit to that field crew.
Yeah, and having them blade of grass, the grass is cut at the right length.
Right. If they forgot to cut that grass, then Amarion's down. So
if they were like me when I was cutting grass when I was a teenager and missed, a couple areas, every
Right.
time you're done, you see one blade of grass sticking up.
Right.
You're like, damn, I got to
I
go
do
back
that to my
over.
son all the time now. I'm like, hey, look, do you see that little sliver right there? You missed that.
Yeah, you
And look
can't
at
let
that
that
over there.
go.
You missed that one too.
Don't
You
let them
know,
get away with it, Brian. Don't let
that's
them get
right.
away. All right, man. Let's go to the injury update as Coach Prime gave us a little insight of what to expect from this game coming up at UCF. From the guys who missed the game last week, important pieces: Dalen Hayden,
Yeah.
Josie Wanquo, and of course Shiloh Sanders up the middle. Um, Hayden, we talked about this last week, dealing with that lower leg injury, more of a high ankle sprain. He was practicing last week, went through pregame drills. Looked pretty good, but I think more precautionary. Kept him out from the game, and being confident in Augusta and Michael Welch. So we should see him back this week. I'll let you get some more insight on that. Also, Chidozie, who will be key to helping to stop the run, which could be crucial in a wet weather game down there in Florida. So,
Yeah.
and then possibility of Shiloh is kind of up in the air. What did you take from what you heard?
Yeah. So first off, I mean, pregame, I was actually back of the standing behind the north end zone in pregame, chatting with the pastor, E. Dewey Smith.
Pass.
Catching up with him. So, hello, pastor. I mean, always great to talk to him. But we were sitting there talking, and the running backs were going through the the ladder drill on the field, right in front of us, and I don't know what they call it, but where they're running their feet through the ladder.
Yeah,
And
just a ladder drill.
yeah, and Dallin Hayden was doing that, and he was looking good doing it. And I was watching. I was like, wow, he actually looks healthy and ready to go. But I think, to your point, I think there was enough confidence in Augustive and Welch after that previous game to say, you know what, let's go forward with those guys, because Dallin wasn't even in uniform when the game started. But my point is that he looked good in that, which tells me he's pretty close. And so I wasn't surprised to hear he's coming back this week. I also happened to, that same pregame, Chidozie walked by me, and I said, "Oh, it looks like you're out again tonight." And he goes, "Yeah, but I'll be back next week." So, I'm not surprised to hear he'd be back this week too. They need both of those guys. And Shiloh, Coach Prime said, I'm not going to rule him out, but he goes, I'd probably like him to be out one more week and be ready after the bye week. Let's not forget they have a bye next week. And so you can give Shiloh 2 more weeks of rest. And I think the way Carter Stoutmire is playing, that's preferable, because there's not that big drop off as we've talked about before. And so I think you have that luxury because of the way Carter's playing. You can keep Shiloh out. And so I would not expect to see Shiloh this week, but Dallin Hayden and Chidozie, they need him.
Yes. So that means that other guys on that defense will have to continue to step up as we saw last week on that defensive line with Anquan Barnes and the other guy, Shane Cokes, getting the sack and getting back there, making some plays on the other side of the football.
His first sack as a Buff.
Yes, big time too.
Yeah.
Came in a big time situation. So hopefully he can, stack on to that. And like BJ Green said, who had a big tackle for loss, that these sacks will come in waves, so to speak. So hopefully the waves will come down in Florida, where we have a lot of guys who have Florida ties, and we can get into that right now. About a dozen of them have Florida ties. So it'll be like a homecoming game going down there for them. We saw Cameron Simmer Craig say everybody's in for tickets. He kind of took me back in the day when we went and played down in Florida State and at Florida and in whatever other UCF I think we played at, South Florida I think we played at, and all of the Florida guys will be requesting those tickets from those teammates. So big games I think is going to be even just trying to get good games. I think from Shador's standpoint, he's going to try to get good games for his Florida receivers, which you have a bit of out there. So, what are your comments and your thoughts on the Florida guys going back home?
Yeah, this is those games that those Florida guys are going to, somebody like Silman Craig and saying, "Hey, come on, man, you're from Alabama. You don't need these tickets. My family needs them," and going to some guys from Ohio or whatever and saying, "Let me have these tickets." But it's interesting. I don't know how big of a factor that is. Covering Colorado all these years, they've never had a bunch of Colorado guys on the team. They've always been very heavy California and Texas. And throughout the Pac-12 years, it was always a huge deal. Half the team from California. And every year, whenever they're going to USC or UCLA, it's like, oh man, we're so excited to go home. And then they would go out and get their butt kicked in California. So, that didn't really seem to matter as much. So I'm curious to see how these Florida guys are impacted
Oh,
by going home.
it's gonna
And
be it's totally different going back to Florida, dog.
yeah,
It's
well,
totally. I don't know whether those California guys were actually
yeah,
in their area where they was going back home to, or had some pride in it. But you going back to Florida, you're gonna have. And I was gonna say even Alabama might not be far enough to be requesting tickets,
yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
sure Cameron, Sim, and Craig family is gonna be, even more excited to take a trip to Florida rather than, getting on the plane to go to Colorado as far as
right,
distance and time
yeah.
goes. But I think those Florida guys are going to take pride in playing in front of their family members and friends.
Yeah, and Coach Prime would sit there and tell me, "Oh yeah, the Florida boys are different," and because he's always,
Yes.
pumping up his Florida guys, and obviously has a lot of pride in his home state as he should. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what it looks like. I've never covered a college football game in Florida. I'm not sure if I've ever covered a game
Oh,
involving a
okay.
ten from Florida. So
Oh, it's going down there,
yeah,
Brian. It's
the
going
only
down in a major way.
the only sporting event I've ever covered in Florida was an NCAA tournament game between CU and Pitt. And so, yeah, I've never covered a football game down there, so I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. But I would imagine there's a lot of those guys that know each other on both these
Yes.
teams because they've been on 7-on-7s or things like that, and so you're always going to have that side of it as well. But you're right. I mean, Shador, not from there, but he knows LeJohntay is, and he knows that Travis, even though went to a Georgia high school, grew up there. Jimmy Horn's from there, and so
Yes.
I would look for some of those guys. They're great players anyway, but I would look for some of those guys to step up this week.
So about, I guess I'll go down a quick list real quick. Isaiah Augustos from Naples, Florida. Ben Boozy, Naples, Florida. Jeremiah Brown from Carroll Bell, Madison County, Florida. Johnny Chainsaw Cheney,
Mhm.
Pope, Florida. Cash Cleveland played at IMG Academy. Ronald Coleman from Jacksonville. Uh, he transferred from Mississippi State. He's from Florida. Brendan Gant from Lakeland, Florida.
Mhm.
Kay Garcia from Fort Myers, Coach Prime hometown. Kareem Harden from Fort Lauderdale. Isaiah Hodge from Hollywood, Florida. Jimmy Horn Jr. from Sanford, Florida, or Seminole, as they might call them, or the Nook. Travis J. from Greenville, Florida, Madison County. Peyton Kirkland, Orlando, Florida. Gabe Landers, Olive Branch, Mississippi, but he played at IMG Academy in Florida. Angel Lopez from Gadsden County, Florida. Tristan Murios played at Clearwater Academy in Florida. Malachi Murphy is from Bradford, Florida. Dominic Ponder, Opelika, Kerosene, Florida. Jordan Seaton, of course, played at IMG Academy.
Yeah.
Taufik Thomas from Tampa, Florida. Saad Wasim from Opelika, Florida. Jalen Wester, Palmetto, his brother also, LeJohntay. Charlie Williams, the tight end. He played at IMG Academy, but he's from Colorado, of course.
Yeah.
So all those guys with Florida ties, and you can't forget Travis Hunter, who's originally from Florida, and his dad still lives in Florida. So I'm sure he's going to
Yeah.
come deep out there
Where's
and really
you said
make
you
a
have that
noise.
in front of you? Where's Levanta Bentley from?
Bentley is from Alabama.
Is he
He's
okay?
from Birmingham, Jackson
Okay.
Olin High School. I think he's actually from right outside of Birmingham in Bessemer. I don't want to be wrong
Okay.
about that. Don't get me, Levante.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
was just curious. I knew he was from the South somewhere, but yeah.
yeah,
And even you mentioned all the Florida guys. There's a lot more guys that are from the South, and you correctly pointed out that Alabama is not that far from Florida. That's a doable
Georgia's not
drive,
that
and so
far. Yep,
Georgia, the Carolinas, and so yeah, you have a lot of those guys that are from that region of the country that they're gonna be excited to go back down to the South, and so yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup because of that, and I think there's a lot of pride in being from down there, and we're
right.
going to see that probably on Saturday.
And also, can't forget about the coaches, as you mentioned, Coach
Yep.
Prime, the head coach being from Florida. Just off the top of my head, Coach Flea from Florida. Coach Warren Sapp, of course, played at Miami, Tampa. He's from Florida. Coach Damian Lewis played at Miami.
Yeah.
Coach David Kelly was the assistant head coach at UCF when Coach O'Leary was there. So he has the ties to Central Florida. They have a good program, and head coach Gus Malzahn, of course, famous for his success at Auburn and with Cam Newton. in those national championship appearances, 1 win. Um, he has a quarterback that's very capable now,
Yeah.
and KJ Jefferson, and a running back there who can really run that thing too. So let's talk about some keys to win this game as we transition there for Colorado.
Yeah, and it starts right there because Colorado's run defense has been much better than last year. It hasn't been like great. I mean, they're 83rd in the country against the run, but as we've talked about earlier, they've been pretty solid against running backs so far this year. They haven't given up a 100-yard game or anything like that. They haven't even given up a 75-yard game to a running back. But now you got RJ Harvey, who has rushed for over 100 yards in 10 of his last 11 games. He was one of the leading rushers in the country last year. He's one of the leading rushers in the country this year. UCF #1 in the country in rushing offense this year. They're going to get their yards on the ground. I think this is going to be a really tough test for Colorado's defense to try to stop this run, because not only RJ Harvey, but what have the Buffs struggled against? It's running quarterbacks, and I don't think they've faced one as good as KJ Jefferson yet. And so, we've seen Sawyer Robertson, who wasn't even a running quarterback for Baylor, get 82 yards the other night, and Cam Miller of North Dakota State got 81 and 2 touchdowns against the Buffs. So it's a tough challenge for the Buffs run defense. It's huge that they get Chidozie back, but you're going to have Chidozie and Shane Cokes and Anquin Barnes and Bentley and the Hill Green, all those guys. They got to be on point this week.
Yeah. I'll say this one thing. I did hear Coach Livingston say after who's that, Sawyer Robertson, make those runs. I think Livingston said, put that on me. Was that? Yeah, I think so. Well, he said, put that on me, and we can correct those things. In other words, he had him in the wrong position, is what he said. I think he can look back on the film, see what he did wrong, and say,
Yeah.
we are facing a coach who had Cam Newton, and they were #1 rushing. That led them to, he was the offensive coordinator there, but they were #1 rushing with Cam Newton, and they're running this same style offense with a big body quarterback, not as tall as Cam, but probably as thick and as strong and as powerful as Cam Newton. His throwing style is just like Cam, in my opinion. Will he be as effective and as efficient as Cam? Will we be able to force him to make some mistakes? I think is a big key.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing is, Buff fans have to know going in, UCF's going to get a lot of yards on the ground. That's just what they do. They average 375. They're going to get north of 200. I would be surprised if they don't. But I think if you can limit what they do in the pass game, that's going to be huge. And if they get 250 on the ground, but they've only got 125 or 150 through the air, that's not too bad of a defensive effort, in my opinion. I mean, I
was going to say, not to cut you off, but finish your point. But I'll take those. If we can get those yards and keep them between the 20s, in other words, we stout up in the red zone and force those 3-point possessions or nothing, and keep them out of the end zone. Then those stats can say what they want. We can give up 200 yards, but as long as we don't have those conversions and the touchdowns, I think that'll be key for us.
Yeah, and I think it's huge too that the Buffs have got really good corners that can go on an island with their receivers, and you can load up the box. I mean, Coach Prime mentioned it this week that, hey, we got to load up the box and stop the run, and they have that luxury because you have Travis Hunter, you have DJ McKinney, and as Coach Prime pointed out, it wasn't a great game this last week for their corners. They got burned a little bit, but that's going to happen to corners. DJ McKinney, I thought, didn't have a great game against Baylor, but I thought he played really well the first 3 games. So he's got to get back on track. But when you have him and Travis out there, and you got a Preston Hodge that can do those things that he does, I think that you're in good shape there. And but they're gonna have to stop the run. I just think UCF, they're so good on the ground. I think that they're going to get their 200 plus. It's just, can you limit what they do in the air?
All right, y'all let us know in the chat if you're listening right now. Can the Buffs hold UCF under 150 yards rushing? Is that a good number? 150? I'll say let's meet in the middle. 175.
I think. Well, I would say they average 375. I would say, can you hold them under 200?
Okay.
I think if you hold them under 200 rushing, I think that's a good game for your rushing or your rush defense.
Yeah, that'll be
I mean,
huge.
I think if
But
it's 175, 150, that's a huge day.
yeah, and like you said though, the passing, and the question is, will Coach Gus Malzahn stick to that game plan of trying to run the ball and run it up like that against Colorado, to where if we get some points on the board early, which
Yeah,
is very key and something that we haven't really got done yet. If we
right.
can get some points on the board early, now how effective is that run game? Can KJ Jefferson step back there and constantly pass um, down the field against our defensive backs and our pass rush? You know, can the pass rush get going? Are they as good at pass blocking as they are in the run game? But
Right.
that's all based off of the offense helping the defense by scoring some points early.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the Buffs have not done that. I think North Dakota State, they might have come out and had a touchdown right off the bat, but other than that, it's been slow starts for this offense. And a fast start would be huge. I mean, if they can get up 10, 14 points early and then maybe limit what UCF can do on the ground, I think that'd be huge. One thing too is UCF has 1 sack through 3 games. And so they
Mm,
have not gotten to the quarterback,
right.
which is pretty big for Colorado, because we know if you can keep Shador clean, then he's probably going to have a pretty good game. They gave up 8 last week to Baylor. They've got to limit it this week. I would imagine UCF's probably licking their chops a little bit and saying, this is the game we get our pass defense, our pass rush going, because Colorado gives up a lot of sacks. Colorado's got to limit that.
I think Colorado and Coach Phil Lodeholt should be saying the opposite, saying this is our game,
Right.
against a defense that doesn't get a lot of sacks. This is our game to make sure we keep hands off of 2, so to speak,
Yep.
and we protect him, especially after we let him get hit last game. Can we protect him enough to keep him clean? As I think I saw a stat on the PFF stat that he is top 3 in the country when kept clean in the pocket.
Yeah.
So that lets you know right there what he can do.
Which is right in line with the book on Shador, right? Yeah, keep him clean, and he's going to pick you apart. And frankly, I can't imagine there's a better quarterback under pressure than Shador, for a guy that
Right.
gets hit as much as he does to still deliver the ball like he does. I mean, even that that Hail Mary the other night, he got drilled after he threw that one, and he was under pressure. So
he threw that thing at the last possible second. I was like, throw it, throw it, throw it.
right.
I just knew it was going to get deflected. Man,
Yeah.
how did he even get that off? Everything was like, football is a game of inches, and that play right there really showcased that, how it is a game of inches. From LeJounte catching the pass, defender falling down. It looked like it bounced to me on TV, naked eye, fast motion, real motion, in real time, should I say? So I didn't react as the same as I thought I would, because I really got a text. I got a text the play before saying, "Pay me my money." Pay me my money text, because he thought the game was over.
Right.
And bam, that happened. So
Well,
that was a spike right there, man.
You're right, game of inches, because that catch is a lot of times a ball that when they review it, they see that it's a trap, right? And it fell down below, and you couldn't see it with the naked eye. And so that's what I was kind of hesitant a little bit, like, let me see a replay on this, because that a lot of times is one that just slips through the arms a little bit. And it takes that perfect camera angle to catch. That hit the ground, but it didn't. So they got every inch their way on that play.
Every inch is not an easy catch, too, man, by LeJounte Weston. Shout out to him. I expect with him returning, we talked about the Florida boys going back. I expect him returning home to have a huge game this week. As far as receivers go, we can get into Travis Hunter really quick. 5 consecutive games with 100-yard receiving yards. Will he keep that up? That, of course, is a Colorado record. What do you think? Can Travis keep that up? Will we see another guy with 100 yards this week? What's the outlook for the receivers and the Florida boys going back home?
I think until I don't see it, I'm going to project Travis Hunter getting 100 yards receiving every game, just because we know he's going to be targeted, a dozen times every game. And so, and I'm just not sure I'm not sure there's teams that can cover him. I don't think UCF can cover him enough to stop him. And Travis had the quietest 100-yard game I've seen in a long time the other day, because um, it felt like he wasn't having a huge game offensively. But then you look down like, he had 130 yards tonight, and it was just a couple of big catches that he had that he's always making an impact on the game. So I think until he doesn't, I'm going to say he gets 100 yards.
Big plays from Trav, man. Shout out to him. And all right, here's our final score predictions for the game. Do we have the actual up-to-date weather report right now? Because last time you said your guy had a report, so let's see here. What is your guy saying right now?
Well, the last I've seen is that it's going to be about 90 and rainy that day. So I saw 60-70% chance of rain. The tropical storm / hurricane is not going to hit Orlando from what I'm seeing, but it's going to be remnants of it, wind and rain on Thursday and Friday. But hopefully Saturday the wind is at least gone and it's only rain. But maybe it won't be as much rain during the day. I don't know.
Let me see. Really quick before we get out of here, Orlando weather for Saturday. Yep, like you said, about 88 to 90. Precipitation. Let me see. Around game time kickoff, it should be thunder and lightning. 80, 60%, 70%, 70%. Oh man. So we could possibly see some daggone delays.
Lightning delay, awesome.
Right. I was about to say which I would not be happy about or would not welcome. No. But I'm sure anybody who attended the game won't be also. Those lightning delays are nothing to play with. Who knows how long they'll last, and especially down in Florida. So just you got to go into the game expecting the unexpected. But if it's just the remnants of the hurricane and it's kind of like that light rain, but it's still sunny and bright out, I think we can still pass the ball. I think we can still use our speed, and it's going to be a problem to deal with on the back end for them. I think I'll say this now because this is what I'm thinking in my head, and I always thought the good athletes in Florida, as far as DBs go, you can find some other wide receivers now. That's how you see a Jimmy Horn Jr. going to a South Florida or whatever. You can find some other wide receivers, but I think most of the better DBs in Florida and high school period, if they're going to go to a Florida school, it's going to be a Florida State. It's going to be a Florida. It's going to be a Miami. I think UCF can get some good guys, but overall, the talent matchup, defensive backs versus our wide receiver group, I think probably is going to be the same thing going into each and every ball game. Even if we are the underdogs overall, the wide receiver group talent level is much higher than the defensive back talent level, and we can exploit them in that way. So final predictions for me in a sloppy ball game, but a nice ball game for us because we're going to win 28 to 21.
All right. Colorado. Well, I'm not as confident as you. And some of the Buff fans are going to call me a hater on this one. I'm not a hater, but I'm going to give you what I see in this game. I definitely think the Buffs can win this thing. But Chico, I also think when I look at the Big 12 portion of the schedule, I think this is the toughest game on the schedule for CU. Utah is probably a better team, but it's in Boulder. Oh yeah.
Okay. Break it down. Tell me why.
I mean, Utah is a better team, but the game's in Boulder. Kansas State comes to Boulder. Oklahoma State comes to Boulder. I think this game going down to Orlando, the bounce house, UCF is a really good team. I think they're underrated. I'm an AP voter. I had them in my top 25 for a couple of weeks. I only dropped them this week because they were off and a couple of teams had big wins, but they're like my number 26. I think they're really good. They hardly ever lose at home. And that running game is so good. I just haven't seen enough from the Buffs offensively consistently. And I don't know if they can really stop that run game at UCF. And so I'm picking actually 34-21 UCF. But I'll say this. I definitely think CU can go down there and win. I just think that this is one that they're not going to. And
you just don't believe.
I don't. I don't That's believe in this one. Brother. I'm not a hater, but I just don't believe in this one. But I'll also say this, that
they're going to go down there and kick the brakes off of UCF.
Hey, listen, if they do that, I'd be happy to come on here next week and say I was wrong. I'd love to be wrong because I'd rather cover a winner than a loser. But I'll say this too. I just don't think I thought the last two games were huge for Colorado's season. They had to beat CSU and Baylor to me, this is one that, like, if you lose this one, you're still on schedule, in my opinion. Like, I've kind of penciled this one in as a loss. And look, they're 15-point underdogs. I mean, the country's penciled this in as a loss. So I think they're still in good shape if they lose this game. If they win it, they're in great shape. And I think they're very capable of doing it. I'm just going with UCF.
All right, I will say this: at least the country and Vegas is on your side. They've been right, the previous games, but this one, man, it's so tough, because the history of Coach Malzone, and he has just like, and I don't want to keep calling him a carbon copy or nothing like that of Cam Newton. He kind of remind me of my quarterback I had at UAB, Darrell Hackney, who went on to play with the Broncos.
Yeah.
Very compact, strong quarterback with a strong arm,
Yep.
and can break some tackles. But, we have been really good against the run. The one thing is that quarterback. This guy is big and tough to bring down, but is he as fast and elusive as the other quarterbacks we've seen? I don't want to start anything, but I think we can get to him probably more than the other guys. And maybe he'll come in wanting to run the ball more than what he should. So I think that a lot of things could play into a very competitive ball game. And I said 28-21, probably 28-24 it could be. But I think we can score more points than them at the end of the day, especially if we come out and get up early. All right.
Yeah, I can see all that stuff happen. To me, RJ Harvey too is way better than any running back they've faced to this point. I'm really impressed with him. But look, I have picked the Buffs the previous 4 weeks. So if I pick them 4 out of 5, I can't be a hater, right? So
no, don't worry about being a hater, Brian. Don't worry about being a hater. Just be true to who you are, dog.
I'm just trying to give my honest opinion here. But I will say I will be thrilled if the Buffs win because it's much better to cover a winning game. And look, it'd be a huge game to me if the Buffs can go down there and win it.
That's right. And I think everybody out there can say they can respect someone giving their truth and honest opinion. And that's where we're going to leave it at right there. All right. That's our show for today. Y'all know what to do. Get in the comment section and, leave your comments and your questions. Let us know what you're thinking for the Colorado Buffaloes midweek live with myself, BiggDogg, Chico, and Brian Howell. Brian, let them know once again where they can find you.
Yeah, buffzone.com and also on X at Brian Howell 33.
All right. And you can also find me on all of the social media websites at BiggDogg Chico, BiggDogg Chico. Anywhere, hit me up and we can go from there as far as information about the Buffs, insights. Follow Brian, myself, and everybody else we're doing shows with. Y'all can catch me each and every Sunday night with Uncle Neely on the Uncle Chico Sunday Night Live, where we will be recapping the game and so on. Download the Bleacher Report app right now. It's where you can get all this content and watch the show live and follow us and like, subscribe, and all the other good stuff. All right. Until next week, we will be up and about here. Peace in the Middle East. Yeah.